say up to the store.
I think.
Excuse me 1 second, we changed the speaker and I think it. No, it's coming up. It's coming up. There it is. Somebody speak, please. Could one of you speak? Hello?
Say yes.
Okay. Thank you. I just needed to check that. Thank you. I am gonna turn the volume up. Jim, can you just say something?
Sure. Glad to be with
There
you.
you go. That's an,
So with that, I'm gonna call the meeting to order at 6:06 in the evening. I'll rise for the pledge of I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. And I see very wide of the citizens of response to us, controversy, when he has received. Hearing none. All right, the approval of minutes is up next for January 25th. Has everyone had a chance to review them? If so, do we have any corrections or can I entertain a motion? Motion for a motion? Huh? Roll call. Oh, it's not on my agenda, but go ahead. Let's roll call. Yes. Sorry, I'm late. Yeah, okay, that's all right. You're just in time for the roll call.
Chairman Veely,
Here.
Ed Gazarian,
Here.
Guy Hoffman,
Here.
Lucas Van Zant. Bruce LaRoche,
Here.
Peter Neiman,
Here.
Lenny Tubbs,
Here.
John Dyken,
Here.
Sandra Capola.
Here.
And we, for the record, we also have with us Diane Jorsey, who is specifically invited to the meeting, with regard to, the topic of farming on the agenda, but is also an alternate for the committee.
And, all right, so we have, well, actually, as an alternate, we received for the missing member. Did you say that one person was missing?
Yes, one person is absent.
All right, so I'll ask you, if you're an alternate, put you on board. Okay. On to the approval of the minutes for January 25th. Ms. Lisa has provided us all with the minutes and what say you?
Make a motion to accept.
Make motion for the accept
I'll second it.
and a second, okay. Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so moved. Discussion. Yeah, okay. So we have Peter and Bruce, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You got that, Lisa? They're good. Let's go. Discussion of priority implementation items. First off, item is the economic development implementation items, including zoning study. And we want to break these down and then also the farming agritourism as well. So on to item 5A, economic development implementation items. And the zoning study. Is that you, Maureen, or?
I'm thinking Jim might be taking the lead on the explanation, dealing, with, he's been, active with economic development, with regard to the zoning study as well, involved in those meetings.
Printed all the handouts that you sent? Is that thing?
No, we didn't really, I don't think we really sent the zoning handouts. So I can
Ah.
give you a quick overview and then Ed, can chip in, but yeah, we're not as far along as we hoped, but we're looking at really 4 areas, particularly the SPDD zone in Hilltop, then the BT zones, BT 1 and 2, the PI zones, PI 1 and 2, and the core area 2 near the train station, as kind of was outlined in the POCD. We have FHI on board as consultants. The Maureen, Chris, and Francisco have met and gone over some initial ideas. And Francisco is going to put together a draft for, for us to start to look at. And once we get something that's ready for prime time, we'll be bringing it to P and Z and the Economic Development Commission. I've been, keeping it in the loop on this process, but, it's early on. So that's kind of where we're at. I can go into more detail, but I think it's better just to wait until we have the proposals and then we can walk through them.
Any estimate, Jim, as to when those proposals will be ready, or do you have a sense?
Yeah, I think, Francisco works pretty quick, so we had a good meeting last week. We gave him a lot of material. So I would say within the next month.
Okay, excellent, excellent.
I'll just add, we directed to look towards comments made during planning and zoning commission meetings and I believe also EBC meetings with regard to those zone comments when other amendments have come through as well.
Fair enough.
Chairman,
Yes.
I guess, Jim rained on my parade.
Oh, yeah. Jim, are you raining on his parade again?
Jim, my report was basically that, but I'm still gonna go through it, okay? So, Jim, the consultant, and Chris Edge are working together, and they don't feel that, this is ready to go forward, because they're still tweaking things. Okay, so we're talking about the BT1, Berlin Turnpike 1, which is a lot of the smaller parcels. BT2 is similar to BT1. There's a handful of those on the pike. Okay, plan shopping development design district that's known as Hilltop. So they're tossing around different proposals with that. That particular site, we're all familiar with it to a certain extent, has not been reviewed in decades, and I give everyone credit that they're finally addressing that. It's a piece that was known as the catalyst, but it was worthless to anybody that was looking to actually be a catalyst because of the way the zoning regs were written. But it's nice that that's being addressed. You got the BTD zone where the arrow is, I know it's pronounced. The audio. That's just next to Blue Lobster, and that's now moving forward. There was problems with financing as far as interest rates jumping up and so forth, and the tax abatement was worked out because we have an abatement that goes up to 25 million, but not up to 40 million and so forth. So that was all worked out in between EDC and the executive board. Plan shopping. I had one sheet of paperwork that we started reviewing that slightly through the commission, like EDC, and just little stuff like they were thinking to, they're being flexible to a certain extent, and they're reviewing everything, which is once again incredible. But one small thing they were looked at is maybe shrinking down industrial development if that site was within an area that was constructed within the loss of the word for long. Sorry.
That's all right. You're doing fine.
Okay. That site there, they were shrinking it down to 100-foot frontage. So we sat down and figured, everyone, the commission figured, you're not gonna back a tractor trailer to that. So it was a slightly thing that we figured should be 150 feet to make that site work, even though it was within a planned development of an industrial site. 100-foot was just not enough.
Can I ask you a question that, when we're talking about the different sites, is there a way you can give us or enlighten us to specific locations? In other words, you referenced the Hilltop and you talked about the Catalyst area. I'm not sure we're talking about, I'm thinking of the same properties. So can you help me out?
Sure. I don't want to go overboard because of what Mr. Mahoney is doing with the consultant and with perception. So I don't wanna overstep my boundaries with that until they can come up with something, and then that's something we can do. I don't want, again, I don't wanna go too far and overstep my boundaries with this, even though I do bring things to my commission. As suggestions. Okay. Well, let them put a package together, you know, we could all review it, and then we could look at different things that we agree or disagree.
Okay, very
So just like Jim was saying, I guess it's worth waiting and trying to assess this. You don't want to give away the store, okay, but you want to have regulations that are attractive and workable, so developers come in.
And last,
Very good. Right now, we're in the position that companies want to be here. Okay? We used to beg years ago. Now they're starting to really come in and they're not gonna argue. We're lucky at this point. All right, we were also looking at the train station, transit oriented development. You know, you see the buildings that are going up there, the third building should be starting soon. That's in the rear. So, yeah, they're reviewing that whole area. Different sites that you would like to see redeveloped. And what would be the allowable units per acre. Okay, so we all invest in things. And development and land and so forth is the same thing. You have a piece of property, you're not gonna sell it unless you hit a number that's attractive to you. So that's what we're looking at, that, depending on what the town would like to see, units per acre compared to if that would attract a developer and it's profitable for everybody. So nothing's gonna happen unless that scenario happens. Not that you're gonna go and come up with some crazy units per acre.
Yeah.
We want to make everything work with that. One thing that was approached to us, probably over a year and a half ago, so
That's all right.
was, redevelopment of Ferndale Plaza
Cheers, everyone.
and, Spam. Anyone know Spam?
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah. They came into us
let
with,
it find more.
they came in with a site plan with, four stories. And, I was the first one sitting next to them. And I had to say to them right away, if you're coming in with 4 stories to use it as a bargaining tool, don't waste your time. You know, come in with a plan that's gonna work, okay? 3 stories might be attractive, but they're talking at that point. Do we redevelop that whole shopping plaza? Tear downs and so forth. So we don't know what happened with that. I think it might have been sold meanwhile, so forth, but it's something the town should probably still keep an eye on for what we'd like to see there. Because what they were talking about were apartments, attracting nurses. That was their key tenants, because it's gonna be in between 2 hospitals. And there's retail involved. Again, that was well over a year and a half ago, and we haven't seen anything since. But I think it's something that we should have in the back of our minds of looking at that redevelopment of that area. If they have a proposal or some proposal comes back in. Lastly, we're looking at putting benches.
Power on.
We look talking about maybe what hours.
Jim, did you lose hearing us?
No, I can hear you.
Okay, the pod in the table decided it doesn't have power.
Oh, okay.
If you hand it to me, I'll plug it into my computer and perhaps, or we'll just, well, if he can hear us. Yeah, we'll just go with the others, with the speaker here. Sorry about that.
We're looking at, EDC is
Lisa, can you
looking,
hear him? Okay.
right?
All right.
Commission is looking to put benches on Farmington Avenue and Main Street, all in that area. We're really been talking for years, pedestrian friendly and so forth, and I think, and we all agree that benches are very attractive, you know? So we did, I provided with, Chris Edge, and we labeled probably for, I think this one here is, right just opposite, central pizza on the opposite side. Okay. This one here would be, right near CVS. Okay. And the benches that we're talking about putting up, that wouldn't cost all that much, that would still, have a life expectancy. These benches are down, on, the boardwalk in Niagara. And there are composite. You know about this, but this.
Yeah, I know it lasts forever, so, as long as, problem is you write on them, they get graffiti on them. Tough to get off because it's very porous,
Okay.
and you really shouldn't be sandblasting or anything like that, so because of what materials, but as far as being on the weather stuff, they'll last forever.
Okay. This one here is right in front of Stop and Shop. And that's right where the bus stop is. I always see people standing there. And
That's one.
there's just enough room to put a bench there and put a guardrail. Right, and so forth. So that's something that would be, people can, dedicate, and have their little plaques on them and so forth. So there's just 4 sides. There's a,
Businesses to pay for them and put a, donate it to the town of Berlin by whatever business or whatever wants to do something like that.
And you take these dogs.
long gone.
What's the cost of inspection?
I don't know. Well, I know that, the wrought iron, the fancy ones are very expensive.
I mean, these aren't gonna be cheap either.
Okay.
I just bought a pair of chairs and they were $400 a piece. And they were with plastic.
I'm figuring, well, shouldn't say, they've gotta be 12 to
$1,500, yeah.
It's better like the wrought iron.
So, no, we're on probably more expensive than it. And these are really maintenance free.
Yeah.
I know we had some brought to us the other day in front of town council, I can't remember what kind they were, but they were saying around 1,200-1,300.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Aren't they, don't they get hot though?
No, composite don't.
No.
Don't?
We walk on it, it's a sunny day.
Okay.
Yeah,
It'll work.
We got it for our docks and we
I have a
walk on it
deck.
with bare feet on a hot day.
Yeah.
That's
Oh, yeah.
that's not a problem.
Yeah, not at all. So if you get something dark,
Yes.
it might, but just gives you light then.
That way.
Yeah.
So Diane and I will kick off and buy the first one. Get the ball out.
Okay, Maureen?
I just want to add that the locations you've listed are, I got 3 out of 4. You think you said 4, but, and I didn't see the pictures. But, chances are they're in the state right of way and or just off of it. We,
Yeah.
our department, maybe engineering can talk to the state, work with the exact location. I'm not sure Chris has done
Yeah.
a lot of that. I recall several years ago with some of the gateway signs, there had to be some maneuvering after they were put in because of the locations and, the distance from the travel way, et cetera, for them. So I just want to make sure everybody realizes, and as far as sponsorship goes, may or may not fall into advertising, so we just have to make sure that there's a provision that's gonna allow for that. We did have to change the regulation for the sponsorship of the community sign that's proposed. The regulation, the Planning and Zoning Commission had to look at that, so we just wanna make sure that we don't end up with it having unintended consequences by somebody else coming along and going, yeah, but we can do it too because the town did.
This is in the infant stage. We looked at it and everything would be on the opposite side of the sidewalk. And obviously, we're promoting, more pedestrian use. But any one of these locations, I got 2 more locations here. you would definitely go talk to the business that it's gonna be in front of. Right, so some may not want it, you know? That firehouse, volunteer park, Dunkin' Donuts, in front of Liberty Bank, and then the opposite side of the place, Central Pizza. And then at the, driveway side of the firehouse.
And if you're the one by CVS, that part, there, that have benches in there already, that way the parking.
Inside, volunteer park. We would put one that would be next to the sidewalk.
Okay.
Again, it's gonna, to get the ball rolling. Take a little time, so. But it's something that, I don't know, we talked about, now we wanna get to a second stage. I'm done.
These are all gonna have to be somehow fastened to the ground.
Yeah, I wouldn't wanna see they disappear.
So they can,
That's what I thought.
they will.
When they pull them up, that's when you hear. Whoop, 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 whoop.
You know, I'm gonna learn to catch one.
Oh, it's really good to put the telephone poles, the wires. on it.
Yeah,
That would really make it.
that was 1987 when the whole road was being dug up.
Yes.
And they put her in conduits underneath. And it was $1 million.
Now
We
it's,
didn't want to spend it. So,
now it's what, 9 to 10,
I,
I think. Okay. All right, very good. Thank you very much. Any questions? There are some very good answers, and thanks for keeping us updated, and we're looking forward to that final presentation. Okay, onto the Farmington agritourism item on the agenda. And I know that Diana, I'm going to leave to you, because you're our agricultural person here in town. Do you have anything that you would like to talk about specifically about this? I mean, I'm calling you out, but if you're not, it's good. I wasn't expecting to be called out, really, but, I guess what I would start with is that, going back to 2013 Plan of Conservation and Development. I started the ball, and I thought I started the ball rolling at that point to, work with farms in town. And with Helen Riggins to, modify the zoning regulations to be more farm friendly. And to allow for agritourism activities. Our farm has been involved in agritourism for many years. We had the Sleepy Hayride that was a fundraiser for nonprofits in town. We have had hayrides for many more years than the Sleepy Hayrides. We've boarded horses over the years, plus we built Christmas trees. And so I thought at the time that because so many of the existing farms were technically in violation of the town zoning regulations, that there would be more interest on their part to have regulations that fit, to have regulations that worked for them. And I was not with, there was some interest, I have to say, but when it came right down to the tires meeting the pavement, there was kind of a distancing. People felt that they already were, they were already engaged in these businesses and didn't want to stir things up, didn't want to call attention to themselves. Yeah. And so I continued to work with Helen, and there were regulations that were modified that made the agricultural regulations more farm friendly, but I don't believe that they were really comprehensive. That's what that consultant. Glenn Chalberg has been the consultant that, the town used for the 2013 Plan Conservation and Development. And he assisted us in gathering regulations from other towns that we thought maybe we wanted to emulate or so, we did an awful lot of work that really amounted to, only a little impact, I think. So, I know there's interest of residents in the town to want to be able to have backyard chickens and be more sustainable. And at the time, those types of wishes were ignored. Our commissioner on planning and zoning at the time didn't want backyard chickens. And it was very interesting that it was just not a consideration. So, you know, so I think that there's a lot of areas that our existing regulations could be improved. And, you know, for me, the elephant in the room is this whole issue with the H2O farm. I recognize that people are opposed to what's going in there, but the regulations allow it. And that whole stretch along Chamberlain Highway, we probably could have had a more desirable use if there was an agricultural overlay or some sort of a tool that would allow for a family operation to have a house as part of a farm operation. And because residences can't be built there, I think that's been a big detractor. And so I think that that might be something worth considering, but I think we're too late. And it's my personal opinion.
Yeah,
I think
well,
we're kind of late.
When we talk about, the agritourism, are we talking about vineyards or how defining agritourism? Is that more like vineyard setups, wineries, or is that more like a roadside, vegetable stand?
No,
No, so I have to change.
I would think of agritourism as being functions like Fairweather Acres is doing in the fall with the petting zoo and the slides and the little hay rides, and or what Lyman Orchards does with the corn maze.
Kind of like what they do at the level.
Yeah, Fleming Farm is another one that agritourism, it's activities to entertain.
I feel like there's some dairy farms that do ice cream, you know, they'll have their own ice cream, but they'll have certain petty animals, you know, sheep, cattle, and stuff like that.
My wife just brought my grandkids up to one in Oakland. They had milking cows.
How many farms do we have, what you consider farms in the town?
What I consider farming.
Yeah.
Problem is, you have
Yeah,
farmland,
really
well,
not.
they
I
may
mean,
not be accurate.
I think it's really handful, and so part of it goes to definitions, right?
Right, that's what I'm getting at,
Yeah.
what constitutes the word farm?
So right
A
now,
lot of land.
well, no, right
No,
now,
it's
our
that.
zoning regulations require 10 acres. You have to have 10 acres combined, they don't have to be contiguous, but you have to have 10 acres to be considered a farm. And so I mean, I guess there's a bunch of people that have 10 acres. And I can think of, like, my neighbors are less than 10 acres and they're producing maple syrup and honey. And by the state definition of agriculture, they would be a farm.
I'm the largest land farmer, probably over there, and they haven't done anything other than hay. And that's the reason I think they're getting away with their farm status, because the hay and they sell it. Otherwise, and they have that
Well,
power.
Lower Lane isn't making a hay.
Well, but they're farmers, their land is.
Correct.
So they have the farm status.
So this, the technicality is, if you look at the. If you look at, the history of the farm status, and taxation is what you're getting at.
Right,
The Farm 490 and taxation of land as farmland stays with the land. So once the people, and the precedent is set by a court case, the town of Berlin against Charlie Shear.
okay,
And the precedent is set with that court case that even though Charlie Shear was retired, he still could benefit from the classification of his land under the 490 tax.
I thought he had to do something to, like, Norway Dairy had to, they had to bale hay. Keep that, because if they didn't, I'd have to
So
say.
you think of the Shear property.
Right,
you
well,
know,
I know that, yeah.
It's owned in part now by the town
Right,
that has the community garden. And so the area that the hay is being built on is town property.
right.
But
There are about 32 farms under that in town.
And there are that many. Of 10 acres or more.
That was the classification, how they tax them. I don't know which ones they are or what.
well, so there's different classifications also, because you have Farm 490, and we adopted an ordinance years ago for open space 490. We might have been on the commission now. Open space 490 requires you to have at least 2 times the underlying zone and enough frontage to have that excess land be developable. So, for me personally, my farm is comprised of many multiple parcels. One of which is classified as open space 490 as compared to farm 490 for the whole rest of it.
When I saw that number, I went, where?
Yeah.
You know,
So
where
you-
are all these?
So you do have people that are benefiting, for like agricultural rates that just have open space because of the open space.
Is that where the golden triangle falls under? Because I'm understanding that the majority of that is
Probably.
considered farm, and I don't know how that could be.
That's
considered
under
farm.
forestry,
Yeah, forestry is in it. Trees.
and they haven't cut any.
Right.
But then you,
Maybe just forest. No, it may be just forest.
we were always wondering that too.
Yeah.
And, we didn't see any trees that we see in harvested or whatever you call it. But I guess they could easily say is we're letting them grow to a certain, so.
Does the state define a farm as 10 acres or more or private?
So the Farm 490 law, the taxation law has, I think, is where there's a 10-acre cutoff. So the distinction is taxation versus use. Right, so under 10 acres might not necessarily benefit from a lower tax, but still could be engaged in agricultural activities.
Just a reminder, if people haven't looked at it lately, is that page 21 of the POCD. It has an open space inventory, including the PA 490 classified land, so you can look at that to see where your land is.
What was the page, Jim?
21.
What's your opinion on parcel, the farming, less than 10 acres? Someone has, 4 acres, they wanted to plant 3 of those acres and have the farm stand. We did discuss that 10 years ago. And we got to the point that the issue was, it didn't affect the neighbors and that the farm stand was safe, that it wasn't a traffic hazard.
I think, Well, so an example that comes to mind for me where that might already be occurring is the little stand on Lower Lane. And, technically, I think they violate our regulations, but at the same time, well, they do.
Yeah.
They absolutely,
They're not getting-
because,
No.
well, they're not.
Yeah,
10
unless they
acres,
own
And
some elsewhere.
they're not growing everything they sell, they're bringing it in.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's something that was talked about, like you said, back 2013, 2014, about making some accommodations.
But I also, what Ed said, it is a traffic hazard there. I mean, people park both sides of the street,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
But they're an example of someone that, they weren't part of the discussions that, you know, I tried to bring people that were literally engaged in agriculture, but they were not among them.
Yeah.
But, they have a farms, or they have a stand there that they're calling themselves a farm stand, but they're buying in most of what they sell. They set up a stand with, like a permanent structure. Yeah, more permanent, with
Yeah,
electricity and lighting, and, you know, they've got a sign up for, you know, like a precaution sign kind of a thing.
Wonder if do they have to get a permit for that?
They should have, but they didn't. And so Maureen and I have talked about this one.
That's part of the charm of our town.
Absolutely.
And that's what
There's
we're
no problem
trying,
with doing it, just do it the right way.
yeah, but that's what we're trying to preserve, and to a certain extent, bring back.
Yeah.
Our discussion.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, if,
Got a lot
someone
of
wanted to do that,
violation
and
problems.
they would have to show us the site of how the cars are gonna be parked. So let's say in their driveway, they can pull off and they can park 3 cars. Okay. But it didn't go past discussion.
Right.
And again, you're a native of Berlin. What area?
No,
Okay, you've been here.
40 years though, better part of my life I've been
But
here.
I understand it still doesn't.
3 generations. But out of all the surrounding towns, Berlin's known for their farms.
Yeah.
Their farmlands, so originally going back, we had 164 farms in this town. Right, so if we can bring some of that back, that's a charm, and of course, it has to be safe. But
To
we should
do
look
that,
at
I think, to do that, I agree that we need to be open to properties of less than 10 acres to allow things like that. And again, you get into the distinction between taxation versus use. So they may not benefit from the taxation side of things, but the zoning regulations still could allow them to put a little stand up. And, you know, I think back to when I was a kid, we had an honor system set up. I would never do that now, but,
There was one
you
on
know.
Patterson Way, there was a gentleman running it there for 30+ years.
Or Blue Hills.
He put his little cart out there with fresh tomatoes and,
Yeah,
And again, good tomatoes.
yeah, great tomatoes.
You know, and I'm like,
Horrible on Chamberlain Highway. Or, what do you call it?
Right.
And
Yeah.
for years had a great farm stand on it.
Yeah.
but if you contacted the Department of Agriculture, there are successful, and sustainable small farms, like 3 acres, that are doing unbelievable things. So, you know, on a case by case basis, you could maybe amend the regulations to allow for things like that. I don't recall the name of it, but, I think in New Haven, there's a 3-acre farm that, is a place that, students, they have field trips for students to go, and they have all these educational things going on. It's a sustainable farm, and they give examples of their sustainability, and it's right within the city. It's kind of a cool thing.
Well, I think-
I asked the food to be moving. I didn't hear what you're saying. Were they, is that the same one that donates some of the food to like the food banks or the community kitchens and stuff? Is that that? Probably, I've heard it.
I believe they have two sites, actually. I'm not positive, but I think when, at our planning conference, that was one of the tours. And I think there were two sites, but I didn't go. I went on a different tour, so. I didn't learn about it, but
That consultant back 10 years ago, correct me if I was wrong, he said 1 acre of tomatoes would yield $44,000. Did I understand that correctly, or was that, and it always stuck in my head for the last 10 years. Does that sound like a crazy number?
It sounds like a crazy number, and so from, I mean, maybe for a farm that's truly established and sells all their tomatoes, but I can tell you that, so many years ago, when I was in high school and college, our family had a pick your own strawberry patch across from my parents' house. And the lot that the pick your own strawberries, were in was about 3 acres. And, over time, we converted the strawberry patch to a pick your own vegetable garden because the strawberries were not as successful as we hoped. And so we thought that the vegetables might be the way to go. And at the time, there was not the interest that we have now for people to support local. So that was a challenge for us. And we ended up having, our only customers really were restaurants that wanted to pay as little as possible for the tomatoes. We had green beans that we were growing that we ended up calling the, St. Casimir Soup Kitchen in Meriden to donate the beans because otherwise they were gonna be wasted. And one poor soul showed up to pick beans that was a volunteer for the place. She couldn't get a single person that was benefiting from the soup kitchen to come and help her. So, needless to say, we gave up on the pick your own vegetables and the pick your own strawberries. So it's gotta be financially worthwhile for people to do. So, you know, I get everybody wants to see it, but fiscally it has to be. Yeah.
I have a question. How does PA 490 actually keep the land being developed? Does it,
It doesn't.
state somehow,
And-
so they don't,
PA 490 does not. Open space 490, our local ordinance, open space 490, commits the, people to having the open space for at least 10 years. Then your other option is to sell development rights. And so there's multiple ways that a farm could sell their development rights. They could sell to the town, they could sell to the state, or they could sell to like a land trust. And so that would preserve the land in perpetuity.
and it would certainly keep your taxes going for quite a while.
Yes, so the problem with that though is, I don't know if you guys would know. In Middlefield, the Newts Farm, on Route 157, I think it is, if you're heading towards Durham on 157, you climb the hill. And,
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but.
Mince's had a dairy farm on the left and on the right, and so they were having problems with stray voltage with their cows, and they lost a significant portion of their herd to stray voltage. Their milk production went down, they lost animals, they put them out of business. And they sold their development rights to the state. It was two brothers that owned the property. One of the brothers was ill with Parkinson's disease and they wanted to retire. So they sold the development rights to the state. They got in a bind when the farm was totally failing with the cattle health issue, to the point where they weren't able to pay their taxes. And when they went to sell the land, because it was encumbered by the sale of the development rights, they had a really hard time selling the property. And it took them years to sell the property so that, they could get out from under that. So, that's one example, I think, to be mindful of. Another example to be mindful of is, I think back to my early days at DEP where, a prior customer of mine, when I worked at Agway, had sold his development rights in Cheshire. And, he was raising cow corn and, the fields that he had were open to the public for, trails and hiking and stuff like that. Well, they never negotiated in the sale of the development rights, the details of his using pesticides on his corn crop. And so people that were hiking on property were all opposed to him using pesticides. And they thought that he couldn't because the development rights were sold. So that was something that never was negotiated. The other thing that's important to think about with the sale of development rights, or from the town's perspective, the purchase of development rights, is the ability of future generations to construct buildings, or do make changes to the property that will help support future agriculture. And so you don't want to have encumbrances on the property that are so strict that future generations can't continue to make reasonable changes to be able to continue their operation.
Also,
If you go from like growing crops to maybe doing beef town or something like that, you need to put up structure, depending on how that's done, maybe you can't put up that barn or house.
oh, okay. I was thinking something different. If they have offsprings of 2 or 3 children that want to still run that farm and build their own houses. So that hadn't been taken into consideration way back.
Yeah.
One good instance of this, is Cold Springs, farm. And that worked out great because their whole intentions are to farm all that acreage out there. They were very successful. The town paid $245,000 for the development rights, something of that nature. In that case there, it's perfect. You got farm stand.
They
Well,
got the
that-
benefit
yeah.
of being on a state road with a lot of traffic. You know, and, so, and in an area just off of the Berlin Turnpike, it's convenient for people to get to, right, you know, so, yeah, it's not as easy in other places.
But they're making it like, you were talking about before, hay rides, you go there, I mean, they opened early and they had face painting, they had, we were up there at Easter egg hunt, and they said they had 300 kids, you know, for Easter egg hunt. So they're really, I mean, it's not new owners, but it's different people running it. I think they're.
New generation of families.
I asked about that, they said there's still some people in the family, but there's people who are actually running it a little bit different. And, I think they're more in tune to what's going on in the other places like Lyman or Rogers, like this. They're doing it maybe on a smaller scale, but they're definitely improving the buildings and everything else, and what they're doing.
I know I work with the Appalachian Mountain Club and there, you gotta watch out on Park Service land, what you can get away with and what can be modified. And we do have contracts with a lot of agricultural people that are still hanging and still operating. So we gotta check the corridor periodically. We send people out there to look at the corridor and see if anybody's approaching. And also if they are, then you gotta catch.
So would it help us or help the town? Because I think there's sort of a sense that we would like to see these little farm things happen. Would it help us to look at, bringing down the acreage requirements? I mean, when you talk about a winery or something, I could see the 10 acres coming into play. But would it help us at all to bring down the requirement of a vegetable farm or whatever to 5 acres? Yeah.
We have to state that, make sure animals are not included.
Yeah, well, I mean, we need I think we need a complete overhaul.
Because in the whole section, like, you need to take that time to do all the farm things, yeah. You need to have definitions. There are minimal definitions established in the existing regulations, but you need to have definitions. So that there's a distinction between, small farm. So our regulations right now have a reference to hobby farm. I forget specifically what the reference is, except that my farm is a hobby farm.
It is.
By definition? By our definition, my farm is a hobby farm.
Because I see, because it's based on.
Well, because I work
for a
we work for a living,
So
to support the farm.
Yes.
Well,
So if I was working just for the farm, and then because in order for it to be a farm, you would have to be working 24/7 on your farm and living off your farm.
Profiting on,
Yeah.
living off the farm.
Yes, so what is the actual definition of a hobby farm?
I mean, if you give me the regs,
I knew you would find them.
I could find it.
You know, it's what
Believe
the
it
reg
very
is.
quick a second.
And I'm probably close, somewhere close on there.
Yeah, one thing I would just throw on the table is that we have, we've, as Diane said, we went through this 2013 and needs to have another look, because I agree, it wasn't really, didn't produce the results you were looking for. And I think, my recollection, Diane, you probably remember better, but I think the 10 acres really came in primarily with the concern about animals, as I recall. And so, it's like a whole new look, but it is, we did get approval to hire hire FHI to help us out with the affordable housing provisions. And we have some money still, I think, in the POCD account that's, let's call it leftover rather than, put toward the new one. So if it was something that, that everybody wanted to pursue, that might be something to consider as a process to bring on a consultant, whether it's FHI or somebody else, to help us, go through that process again and take a new look and try to do it better.
If I may, I was advised at the time, and I was, had supervisor, that this was the first chunk of the regulations to deal with the larger scale farms, and the intent was that after that study and that first phase of regulations was adopted, it would be another phase that would address the smaller and the small animals, smaller parcels, etc., and that phase never happened. So, there may be an opportunity. I'm not saying there is or isn't, but maybe an opportunity when digging into the regs and studying them, that what's there may not need to be overhauled as much as added to. It may need to be overhauled. I'm not gonna say it may not, but that may also be the intent, is put on another layer of,
And at
okay,
time-
that
at time,
has
we were
focused on a
yeah,
winery,
focused.
focusing on some of those larger scale agritourism items, not the smaller
Yes.
scale.
And that's true because, we wanted to do things, more at our place to bring more business and that we have not followed through with.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think also, I don't know about you guys, but a lot of people draw to my attention certain homes in Berlin that have chickens on water rate going in. And they're
They're all
running
over the place.
around, I know, we're all.
A lot of people think.
We have a lot of enforcement orders out on that one.
Farmington Avenue by the brook. by the street.
Yeah.
well, and so Bill, I mean, to that point,
Sort of
I
McDonald's.
think in a way we were right. Maybe not totally right in the way that it was handled because. I get it, people want to have a few chickens and have fresh eggs and do their thing, but. My other hat, well, my work hat, I'm dealing with,
cities and rodent problems and restaurants and rodent problems. And so, I recall the discussion about rats, you know, going hand in hand with chickens. And so, rats will travel 300 feet from their harborage to water, or 300 feet from their harborage to food. So you have to think of like a 300-foot circle from anything. When you're considering. Yeah, I know, and regulation. Because you don't want to affect the neighboring property. Oh, absolutely. And chicken food is not. It's very acidic. You really don't want to.
Literally, in the city, some of them, they do have them.
We investigated a complaint, in my work where the lady was keeping ducks in her house and the rats were so bad that they were coming up with the floorboard from.
Oh, my
the house.
God.
So it's,
Well, no, I mean, this is, I mean, I understand, you know, people that love their land, have a little farm and, you know, kids and stuff, but you gotta get some property to go behind.
Just don't make it smaller than 3 acres. My wife,
Well,
I got her at 10 with the chickens.
but what I'm saying is, I don't even think it has to be small. I mean, I'm even thinking about if you had 1 acre. When you think about it, 1 acre with a house on it, unless you're putting a pool and all the other crap in there. I mean, basically, you've got some property.
Yeah.
Why can't you have 5 chickens?
And if you get your neighbors to sign off
I
on it.
mean, you think about it, I mean, 1 acre? Well,
Yeah, but if your neighbors sign off on it once, what if the neighbors move and you get new people in?
well, then you say.
It's gotta be a stone, it's gotta be in the reg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I-
But I don't-
Can I add, it also applies on one of the orders we've had is rabbits. You know, people with rabbit, things in the backyard that still
No.
not a domestic animal, so.
Oh, I've got rats in my backyard, the fox takes care of them.
It applies to that as well, which a lot of kids have those for projects
Yeah,
as
they
well,
have
so.
to-
But we get in the complaints that
Yeah.
that's a farm animal that the neighbor has, so.
We've had goats in the house, for God's
Yeah, I
sakes.
was gonna say
Stop.
the
We
goat
just,
craze.
we had to go through that whole thing on that pygmy goat on farming, on the Britt Road.
Hey, Jim, can we just confirm you can hear us again?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry we lost you.
I'm just thinking that if we want to try to make some progress on this, it was mentioned that, you know, maybe the first, it was the first stage or whatever. I would think about, you know, looking at sizes, something in that, whether it's 3 to 10 or 5 to 10. And probably focusing more on people who want to grow things. If you wanna, I think if you include the chickens, small lots, and trying to take care of everything with this next step, we're not gonna make any progress on that. That's gonna be the one that's gonna divide everybody, and it's gonna end up over, you know, being the thing that dominates this conversation, rather than trying to make some changes so that we can, we can have more farm stands and have them be really farm.
So I have just, I guess my word of caution on that is that anybody that's engaged in agriculture in a real way has liability insurance. And they make sure to be growing their crops in a way that, that their produce is healthy. They don't want to have their crops confiscated by the Department of Agriculture for illegal pesticide residues and things like that. So the legitimate growers, I think, are probably taking more care than some of the smaller places, of backyard gardens, that people might be adopting the a little is good, more is better attitude when they're treating their product, treating their plants, or treat their tomatoes with something that's only labeled for peppers or things like that. So that, I guess, is the program I work for regulates pesticides. The Department of Agriculture and Consumer Protection specifically collects produce from grocery stores and farm stands and growers, and they have them analyzed at the agricultural experiment station for pesticide residues to see if the residues are within tolerances. And so if they find residues that exceed the tolerances, then they refer it to our program. And so we would send an investigator to find out why the pesticides were in violation.
So we're looking at a twofold subject matter here. One, the size of the farm. And two, the condition of the pesticides and everything else. So you have a twofold thought.
Yeah, but we could monitor that.
We could monitor
You'd
either
never be
one.
able to monitor. You know, no more you can monitor parking on a street. You
No.
can say they have parking for 3 cars in their driveway, but the people coming down the street are gonna park on the street. And those are
Yeah.
safe.
It's just something.
To a certain extent, yeah.
You know, I
Um,
just bring that for, you know, discussion. Anyway, well, this was a way.
Can I just
Yeah.
give a point of information? So while the conversation was going on several minutes ago, there is a page called The Basics on Public Act 490. And it talks about its history from 1963. And it's the government portal. It's portal ct.ct.gov. And I just Googled PA 490. But it answers a number of questions. And I think it'll answer some of the questions that there are several people asked. So.
Yeah,
Resources
A little
are
more
there.
clear when I talk about farming, and I really wasn't talking about animals. I was just talking about vegetation, so.
Well, so when we were, in 2013, when Glenn Chalder was assisting, with the consideration of, revisions, he brought a few different examples of size considerations based on the size of the animal, kind of a thing, that was an interesting concept. I think it would be a headache for Maureen and your crew to.
It is
Exactly.
a parameter that a lot of towns rely on. For instance, you have 3 acres, you can have 2 large or 6 in this category, or so many hens or whatever, and it is. And if you have 1 horse, maybe you can have 6 chickens, but you can't have 1 horse and 12 chickens. You can have, but if you don't have the horse, then maybe you can have 18 chickens. You know, it's that.
It's like a point system.
Yeah, it goes back and forth, and baby animals don't count in many of the regulations. There's samples throughout the state. Ah. So. I did pull up the regulation that speaks to, or has the definition of hobby farm, if you're still interested, if not, well.
So then what would be the next thing to try and look into our regulations, zoning regulations regarding farm? Is that something we look for a consultant to be put together on look for volunteers for a small group to review things and come up with ideas and then, go out to the town for comment or something. I mean, I'm just trying to think of I think we have a lot of good ideas here and I think, the town would like to see some changes, but what are the right steps to go through to make it start happening? Because
Well,
obviously we did phase
I-
1 10 years ago, now we gotta start working on phase 2.
I think that Jim brought up one of the approaches, which would be to engage a consultant and similar FHI, planometrics, we've done that in the past. Staffing wise, as far as doing it in-house with regard to,
So how many parcels do we have like that? Let's look at that. Or how
well,
many
let
are we
me
talking about?
Let me finish that question and then, I think Jim pointed us to some pages, that have some of the totals. We did do a farm count. We did it a couple of years ago at this point that I last dealt with the farm count, so I don't really remember the numbers, but the other options for, anytime when we're looking at regulations is, of course, a committee. Yeah, you can form a committee. They're usually prompted by the Planning and Zoning Commission because in the case of the economic development charges in the regulations, in the POCD, economic development is kind of working on the business zones. They're the business people, the business. They know what the issues, what some of the problems are or desires are. The same with farming, we don't have a farm commission.
Right.
So, I think it would fall on the Planning and Zoning Commission to determine where it is in the priorities and timing and whether it's a committee, whether it's an issue for staff to work on, but that has to be balanced, just like in the implementation plan against the other items in the implementation plan and the other items that are on the table already being worked on. So this has to be determined. It's priority level and for the instance of, and I'll go back to these poor chickens that we keep talking about, but we get people come into the counter since the day I started working for the town. Can I have chickens? Where can I have many chickens can I have? Or even looking at a house with several acres. Can I have a horse? Can I have, the different things people might want to have on a larger parcel of land? And, I speak, once the regulation was adopted that we have now, we've been saying, it was planned at that time, 2016, I think it was adopted. I'm not exactly sure of the date, but 2014, 15, 16, that the group of citizens that was very interested in small animals would do the legwork with what are best practices, how much distance should you have, how big a hut should, what kind of animals be allowed to have, what's there's a term for it from the Department of Ag, as to the best practices for taking care of animals and, doing them appropriately, et cetera, and working in that language and working on it. And I've got to tell you, almost everybody that came in, that, had come in and asked about it after the fact. Yeah, I'll be back. The next person I saw was somebody different. And the next person I saw was somebody, a few, might pop in every few years, but generally speaking, it didn't come to fruition of that imagined public interest that happened evidently. I didn't go to those public hearings, but that happened at those public hearings. There was a facet of people very interested in pursuing that side of farming. So, and that's the other way regulations get changed, is the public or someone coming in and asking to change the regulation.
There were a
Just
lot
to-
of people.
Again, the,
Oh,
But
I was just gonna say, pointing out the maps that we have on page 103. We have the maps, which again, not a definitive list, but we tried in the POCD process to look at what farms were out there. So there's active farms that are listed, that are shown, plus the three PA 490 farming categories. And obviously hard to read on this scale, but we have the electronic maps, so people can certainly dig into those.
thanks for finding that, Jim. I knew it was here.
I know, it all sounds familiar when we talk about it, Did we do this?
I remember seeing it the first time.
Well, I think it's up to us to decide if we want to continue addressing the farming issue, the agricultural tourism issue, or you want to go as a subcommittee about it, or do we want to hire a consultant to have them look at the regulations, or do we direct it back to planning and zoning? In hopes that planning and zoning would perhaps address the issue. But I think that probably be more must. Agree. So do we want to think about how to address this? That we are going to take a look at the regulation and.
So just to pull it through to the POCD, the strategy and action is on page 137 as well. As a, there, it may be elsewhere as also, but that's the page I had tagged on farming. Jim, is farming in another strategies or?
I didn't look again, but yeah, it should be in that cultural, section, I think.
Yeah, the cultural section. Again, we have EDC, the town manager's office, the town council, planning and zoning, depending on. Mostly planning and zoning, or leads,
What's the thing, so the high.
or the high priority as far as leads go.
One of the regulations would apply to these small farms, whatever acreage, which is cited. You don't want to have a farm stand that's on a curve, I should say. We got to make sure that the parking is easy to get to when they're not parking on the street. And then you probably want to have the neighbors sign off on it. That such a thing is going to be, done in there. So it's a little different than the average commercial use. And once again, these people could generate a couple dollars off their plantings, but we're still trying to keep that old world. Stop at a farm stand. Years back, you guys used to stop and get ice cream.
But you do that, and like, perfect example, is the guy in the motor lane. Anywhere you talk about putting that, he's closing down because he has no parking. He's not growing his own stuff there, it's very little of it. So why do you stop him from doing what he loves to do? Because you're putting regulations on it.
where's he getting this stuff?
Probably the farmer's market, yeah.
It's fresh stuff.
It is, and he does grow some of it, he has a little thing in the back, he grows some of it. But again, are you gonna stop him from doing that? And because I drive by there, I live about a corner from there, I drive, you live closer, we drive by there all the time, and there's cars always there. Even when he's not there.
Oh, yeah, they leave their money.
Yeah,
Also, money
so,
there.
but are you gonna tell him that, oh, you gotta put a parking lot in, or you gotta do? Or you-
I don't know what you would do in a situation like that.
And he's not the only one, there are other ones in town that are doing the same thing.
Yeah,
I don't think you're gonna do
I
anything.
mean, as long as.
Wait,
No. Well, they
We
did put
can't
that
police half the stuff we have in town, so. Including stuff on Farmington Avenue. Cause there's a mess down here.
Not the letter winner,
Yeah, you need more than a letter. You
or I think a
need
citation.
a
where-
bucket loader to lift
Thank
up
you.
the stuff. My old shop has literally a junkyard of parts in front of it.
Oh,
How many
Really?
cars was there?
He was there
originally?
this week.
Eight,
Se-
so what do they got
8.
there, 20?
I thought it was 17.
Oh, then they got changed after that. The original.
I could be wrong. I pull out that old, well, I used to pull it out. Now it's pull off. It's so tough.
Yeah, there's 8 in one row.
People on lower lane. Yes, I'm going.
We do too.
Well, you know, and I would hate to think that this discussion put them in jeopardy, but it's true to a certain extent.
What kind of
It's just
jeopardy?
funny to see that, but,
Well,
you know,
If we enforce the
They-
currently have, they're in
Yeah.
jeopardy
Well,
already.
I'm sorry, I
Existing
think-
ordinance.
I'm sorry, Keith.
I said, we're already in jeopardy if you enforce what we have now, right?
right.
So,
So, I mean,
so the zoning office, to the best of my recollection, does have, and I don't take in those complaints daily anymore. You know, we now have a zoning officer, but I believe we have a couple of active, complaints that have been put in that it exists.
Really?
But I'm sure
Yeah.
if you went and complained.
And it
about
doesn't meet the
complaint-
regulation.
Complain that you closed them down.
It's
Yeah.
probably because they didn't have the tomatoes they wanted when they stopped by there. I see cars there all the time.
But it is a permanent structure, because it's on,
And part of, actually, the structure is one of the complaints. The structure was not permitted, even in a location to get a
it's really
permit.
closer to
They
the.
take out a building permit.
Oh, my.
They might not need,
So
need a zoning
what do
permit.
we wanna do about this? I mean, how do we wanna attack? How do we wanna tackle it? And I understand, Lenny, that you're saying we're never gonna correct everything, and
No,
you're
yeah.
absolutely right, but I think.
We still need we need Brett.
Yeah, but I,
No doubt.
no, and I understand where you're coming from, and I think my concern generally is not for the guy who has the vegetable plant in the back. I'm more concerned about the guy who has the chickens, and now he's drawing the rats. And he's maybe living off of Porter's Pass, and he's got an R7, thing, and his whole thing is, well, I wanna just have chickens that have fresh eggs. Well, then you have all these people saying, okay, I'll have chickens, I'll have chickens. Let's say everybody gets chickens. We're gonna have an infestation, and the rats
I agree.
will come. And that's very bad, and it's tough to get rid of chicken food too, because it's so acidic, you can't.
Would the approach be rather than, to think of uses, think of drafting regulations that would allow uses, maybe the opposite should be done, where we draft regulations that specifically prohibit.
Light should go off in your brain, young man.
I think so.
It's like, I'm like,
I actually have a stupid question if I could ask.
oh, no, you've asked me a stupid question.
What are the rats attracted to, the eggs?
Yes.
The eggs, the food,
And
the warmth
So the
of the
chicken
manure.
feed,
Yeah, the chicken feed, the water, and especially they love to get a handle on those eggs. They bust them right.
that was an excuse to ask my stupid question, mention on me, so I decided to ask it.
Oh, okay, well, no, that's okay.
Yeah.
But that's what they're attempting, it's foxes too.
I was
You get chickens, forget it. You got
Coyotes.
I was gonna say
Coyotes.
that
Yeah,
I'm surprised that
Snakes.
there's not a lot of conversation about that, because
yeah.
we have a lot of foxes.
A lot of coyotes.
Our neighborhood,
We digress.
I have foxes going through my backyard probably every other night. And coyotes once a week, and it's down the road from you. I got neighbors around, I don't have a.
I go through the summer all the time. I see all the.
Well,
foxes.
I think it's just because, and I think sometimes people think, oh, they're cute little chickens, I wanna have these little chicks, and, but they don't see what the danger is,
Big
that
picture.
what comes the bigger picture. And they carry the little mites. You don't want them
So
getting
if you're
on you.
cleaning the chicken coop every single day, you're not gonna avoid the rats. You might do
No.
a good job at maybe mitigating it to a certain
No.
extent, but you'll never stop it.
Right.
So whether they're just taking the eggs or taking the chicken feed,
Well, yeah, they come right in,
Yeah.
the chickens get scared, and, they puff, and then they take off, and they leave the nest of eggs there. And they just go after the eggs.
Sounds like some people are talking from experience. I don't have that experience. In my life. I see a coyote once in a while. Bear here, but
Well, my father had a farm, we had 300 chickens every year. Yeah, the chickens. I never went barefoot, my mother would never let me go barefoot. I don't care what the neighbors' kids are doing, you put your shoes on, because she knew, once you got off that stoop, you were a chicken, because they were all over the place. So
Is the right way of bringing this back,
That's true.
like, to recommend that go to planning and zoning to determine if they want to hire a consultant within or you know, in staff and, or I don't know if the other part is, you know, can the members of the POCD, I don't want to, I'm not trying to put more work on you, but is there a way electronically that section of the regulations regarding farming can be sent to everybody?
Yeah, it is online, but yeah.
More ordinances though aren't the answer.
Yeah.
We've got the ordinances.
Some
We've got the
can tell you
rules.
No, but maybe
The
things
rules
need to
are-
be
we have
updated,
to
or,
work
you know,
our
maybe
individual-
just a couple changes could make a big difference, you know, but I think unless we kind of take a look at them,
Yeah, I
we're
agree.
making the right
agree.
guesses, or
Yeah.
assumptions.
And the hours getting late. so
We
we
need
want
to sit in the
to-
legs in our, cancel now, and come back to the next meeting.
Well, we can't, but the next meeting is what? June.
June.
June,
We're skipping July because everything else is off in July.
yeah, okay. Well, the next meeting's in June.
June
so I-
27th.
Oh, thank you.
I think we have.
Oh, so we moved it to June
Revisit this
instead of.
one.
Yeah.
Did Diane
That's what it said.
come back? All right,
Well, we are.
Jim?
To establish that, going to be, vegetable farming. Okay, so that's, you just can't use the word farming. Okay, so we would eliminate and you, put it in there, you know, livestock and animals and not.
I'm almost thinking we're gonna have to look at all the regulations regarding farming, because what will happen is if you only start looking at the vegetable farming, then people want chickens, you're gonna say, oh, you don't care about them. So.
No,
I think
that would go
we'll have
with
to,
acreage.
You know,
If you're gonna have a 5 acre
well,
farm.
yeah,
4
we
acre
have to,
farm.
we're
yeah,
gonna
we're
have
just gonna
to
look at,
write a regulation that addresses all the issues. You know, and
or
it's,
tweak what we have.
and you know, it's probably we'll get 50% of the people to come on board with us, but it's.
The thing is, the people who are gonna break the laws are gonna break the laws no matter what the law is or rule or regulations.
They already are.
They,
Yeah,
exactly.
right,
Exactly.
So, anyway, well, in the interest of time, so we'll put that onto the next, maybe that should be the only item we talk about, that we go around, how about that? But let's move on, but we complete the rest of the agenda part.
focus on that.
Yeah, I know, I think that's what we'll do. All right, updates for implementation plan and mapping, if any. Do we have any updates? Not yet, because we all look at the farming, right?
Right.
All right, next.
Well, I think
go.
we may have a, just a status. We've been working, Jim has been working on, with multiple people in departments on, updating the sidewalk plan map and some other things. So there's a lot going on with mapping. It's not something that's not happening. There's stuff going on. It's just peripheral and behind the scenes at this point from, with regard to what this committee's working on, but it is, things that are all otherwise addressed in the implementation plan and the POCD.
Terrific. The next item 7 is suggested topics to focus on at the next meeting, which is gonna be June 27th. Now, we had environmental priorities, transportation priorities, and other. Do we want to still look at environmental and transportation, or we just wanna just do other and just look at the farming and have a discussion about existing regulations and what we'd like to see and what's doable in town? So we'll skip over environmental and transportation and save that for a wintry day.
27th.
Yeah, that's on. Okay. Comments from other committee members to. Anyone have any comments or suggestions, or, yeah, Ed?
Maureen, can we make this more user friendly?
There,
Regulations.
you actually have the old version. It was republished in 2019,
big-
2018, and 2019.
That's because it.
And we're actually working
It's
on
got a bigger font.
typing in the amendments since 2019. One of our clerical assistants is working on putting all the amendments into it so we can reproduce it. It's not printed and published in that way. The commission members, for the most part, and I think actually it was distributed to your commission as well, was a 3-ring binder
3 inch.
that had it.
3 ring binder.
So those that got the binder got the POCD in it as
I
well.
looked at the old one, I said, this? What the heck?
Yeah,
What are they doing over
There's
there?
other documents.
That's why Sandy left.
The 3-ring binder has other documents in it, including the POCD.
But now I
So-
have budget fine.
Yeah.
But we are working on retyping it, but you haven't, I believe, the old version there. I don't think that's.
2018 stuff.
Oh, you do have 2018. Okay, it was republished in 2019 and it is online. We print it offline now. We don't send it out to a printer because nobody purchases
It's
them.
just a,
We have one hanging around for Edward here.
Not,
need
not
something to read.
pre-printed, but I can have,
I mean, see
I
where
can
I
have
have-
a few more
I
printed.
everything out with the tags.
It looks
Wait,
like mine.
That's a good way to.
Yeah. I don't know, it's just sometimes to find.
Look at
certain
the-
things.
I'd be willing to
Okay,
pay for
let's go.
something.
I mean, we can certainly make them. We just don't have the way we used to have them printed and bound because most of the, law offices and the engineers and those that came
Take
to
them out
buy
to eat.
them
Right.
don't buy it. Even the POCD, we printed enough for distribution to certain committees and commissions, and then we didn't print any extras because I have 2 boxes of the 22 and a half, 2 and almost 3 boxes, I think, of the 2013 plan that were
Okay.
sent to the printer. Printed, they printed it.
Yep.
And we never sold them. So this go around, we're print on demand.
On an as-needed basis.
Yeah. Yeah, so they can be printed, we just don't have a stockpile.
Okay. Anything else?
I don't know,
And the
maybe-
online version, I do just wanna note, the online version does not have in it all the amendments that have happened since the last publication.
right.
Those have been added on documents, so they're getting typed in right now.
Okay.
My commission was supposed to have 5 members full-time and 3 alternates. After Bearwood passed away, I was down to 4. Full-time members, no alternates. So it looks like we're getting a couple of them, one of which actually works for the New Haven Water Control people. So he comes with a professional engineering, so it actually looks some good requirement,
And which commission is that?
water sewer. Water control. Somebody else is the economist, I don't know if he's an accountant, so I've got somebody there.
So the other guy from New Haven, that's where he works, but he lives in Berlin.
Yeah.
Well, that'll be good. People want the commission back. Oh.
Yeah, he came to the meeting Tuesday night and he seemed very attentive and had a lot of questions and answered.
Good.
And he filled out his paperwork
Excellent.
the next day, which is okay.
From the veterans.
Jim, did you want to talk about CROG and the application?
Yeah, I would just mention just a few things very briefly on implementation. One is, as Ed said, we worked with Prague and Newington and Weathersfield. And Prague took the lead. They did an application for a major federal planning grant. It's called a RAISE grant program to look at primarily pedestrian safety along the turnpike. And it'll be comprehensive multi-year study, so that's of interest. Another thing of interest is that we did issue the RFP for the Knights of Columbus. The response date was today. We got 4 proposals, so we'll see where that goes. Another item is, obviously, we sent some things late to you, but there's been movement on affordable housing, and so take a look at those and let us know if you have any questions. I would mention that council has been working with Parks and Rec, East Berlin Pool Complex, consideration of redevelopment of that. And they've hired a consultant to to work on that. We're thinking about applying for a steep grant this summer to help with the redevelopment of that property. And then, as Maureen said, we're working on a sidewalks map, but that relates to a possibility that we're looking at applying for a large transportation alternatives grant to do multiple sidewalks. And our focus at this point is in the area of the schools. And we'll see how, it does require a match, so we'll have to determine how much match we're willing to put up, and we'll roll the dice on grants as always, but we're working on, I think, potentially a major sidewalks grant to fill a lot of the gaps at once if we can do it. That's,
Sorry, what? Worthington Ridge and sidewalks.
Oh, Worthington Ridge, oh, they need to reach.
Concrete or amosite?
Yeah, you're walking the road.
Concrete or amosite?
I don't care, the sidewalk.
yeah, it's on the list, Peter. You're thinking the same way we are, man.
Good, thank you.
You serious?
Well, we put together like a comp more what we think, not every sidewalk, every street, right? But connecting the gap sidewalks. And yes, Worthington Ridge is on the list at this point. And then we're gonna have to see if we can go for everything or whittle it down. But yeah, I mean, like I said, we're concentrating on the schools areas, and there's not a lot that we're picking up with school students with Worthington Ridge, but the thinking, I mean, that's a historic street, in town, important street, and why wouldn't we have sidewalks there,
Very
right?
busy street.
Yeah,
They actually walk on my lawn,
Yeah.
it's a smart one, yeah. But the worst part is when we see someone with a baby carriage in the street.
My granddaughter,
That's,
Yeah, but don't you gotta get
You do
permission from the
this.
historical commission?
huh?
Don't you gotta get permission from the historical commission?
I don't, know, but it's to the point, more people are walking and walking
Oh, yeah.
on that street. And
All
Yes,
on these
nice.
streets, yeah,
Uh,
okay.
I just got one thing, I think it's important to this commission, to the town, and maybe you can answer this to land trust as far as the care better, what's going on in Berlin Turnpike. The care better incident.
I was told that, the bill it's proposed and was proposed on a slide basis.
I want to know what the land trust is.
No, it's not dead.
No, yeah, it's on the house agenda, right? Yeah.
It is on
And
the.
it's not gonna come to a vote.
Yeah, but the plan was, it wasn't even to get to the house agenda, is my
Right.
understanding, and now there it is.
It's already
Yeah.
is.
So who says it's not gonna be up for a vote? Nobody knows that.
Right.
We got 2 weeks left of session.
I was just gonna say, the session's over.
Yeah,
We're saying.
I think
now
people are
it
done
goes-
believing that, taking people's word for this one.
Well, wait, and, I talked to Ken,
Right, tell them to tear it down, it's in Berlin,
Absolutely.
yeah.
tear it
Oh,
down.
yeah.
I
Absolutely.
talked
As
to,
a state park land.
Dennis Kearns
Take it
about it
down.
at one point, and he said exactly what you're saying.
Yes.
It's not dead until it's dead,
Right, it may be
Right.
dead at some
Yeah.
point, but.
But the whole thing to me is what he offered to buy the land.
Well,
It's-
tell you what, I'll buy two.
I'll say, I'll
Turnpike for 35.
That's what I'm saying, I'll buy the money right now.
Yep.
All
I had a conversation.
In a heartbeat. We're gonna buy it all, Peter.
Exactly, you get to, for that kind of money.
All right.
I had a
Yeah.
conversation.
That's our retirement.
Okay, all right. Jim, did you want to say something? We'll go on to that later.
no, that's all I have, other than just to let Sandy know, we did talk about sidewalks just now, and the idea that we're gonna possibly apply for a major sidewalk grant, so.
Okay, all right, with that.
And Can I just say one thing about one of the letters you got the letter on the affordable housing, and there were just a couple of typos, and just the one that has affordable housing in East Berlin. I just wanted to point out the change of address, because the 319 is the built out project that's there. 309 Main Street is the one getting built now. So that's just, I wanted to correct that. I think that's probably,
Main Street is on the top one.
should say 309. That's, yeah, 309. They're next to each other and very easy to get them confused. The last paragraph on the first page, I think. Just anytime it says 309 or 319, it should say 309.
So, no, all right, so we're over the comments, so let's make a motion to adjourn. I'll entertain one at 7:39.
I move to adjourn.
Thank you, John.
Second.
Do we have a second? Thank you, Peter, further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so moved. Thank you.
Good night, Jim.
Good night, all. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks for-
Take care.
The protest that I'm hearing